Last week, Shin-Soo Choo signed a one-year deal with the Korean baseball organization team SK Wyverns. Choo, despite growing up in South Korea though, has never played a professional at-bat in his home country. Unlike most Asian-born players who play several years at the top level of their respective pro league, Choo was signed straight out of high school by the Mariners. This is a pretty unique career path, but it led to a lot of success for Choo, who has quietly delivered a well above average career with several all-star worthy seasons, and may be the single best Asian-born hitter to play in Major League Baseball. So in our second edition of Underappreciated Players, let's celebrate the career of Shin-Soo Choo. After his signing at age 18 in 2000, he worked his way through the minors just like any other young international free agent signing and debuted for Seattle in 2005. He didn't really impress in short stints in the majors in 2005 and 2006 and didn't have much prospect pedigree, so Seattle shipped him to Cleveland for Ben Broussard. He finally got a chance to starting job in Cleveland in 2008, and he did not let the opportunity pass him by. His 2008 season, which again was his first real full-time opportunity, Choo delivered a .309 average and 150 WRC+. He wasn't called up until May 31st and started sorta slow, but he turned on the Jets in the second half of the season with a 172 WRC+ and 2.8 WAR in the final 3 months of the season. His WRC+ in that second half was 4th in baseball, right behind Manny Ramirez, Albert Pujols, and Mark Teixeira, and his WAR was top 10 in the league in that time frame. Choo was also named AL Player of the Month in September when he hit for a .400 average and 196 WRC+, starting a trend in his career of continually improving as the season went on. Choo remained excellent in 2009, posting 5 WAR, a 136 WRC+, and being the only player in the league with a .300 average, 20 homers, and 20 steals. 2010 was Choo's best overall season in Cleveland, with a 145 WRC+ and 6 WAR, top 10 in the AL and good for MVP votes. He had a few more good to great seasons with the Indians before a trade to the Reds in 2013 for his final season before hitting free agency, where Choo made the case he would be one of the best free agents available that coming winter. He gave the Reds career bests in on-base percentage, WRC+, and WAR, helping Cincinnati qualify for Choo's first postseason game, the NL wildcard game against Pittsburgh. Choo did homer in that game, but it's mostly remembered as the Cueto game, as the Reds' offense went quiet and the Pirates won 6-2. After this, Choo hit free agency, and he would be one of the hottest commodities on the market, so let's take this opportunity to talk about what made Choo such a successful player. He had a beautiful left-handed swing that was capable of spraying the ball to all fields and put the ball in the air with authority, but what really set him apart was his excellent plate discipline. At his peak in 2013, Choo's 15.7% walk rate was second in baseball, sandwiched right between Joey Votto and Mike Trout, who are two of the most prodigious walk drawers in baseball history. Choo's sharp eye meant that even when he wasn't hitting for average or power, for instance in recent seasons in his late 30s, he was still a somewhat effective top-of-the-order bat. On the other hand, Choo's two largest weaknesses that prevented him from being a true superstar were his poor fielding and drastic platoon splits. Choo's hitting was significantly worse in pretty much every facet against lefties, with a 91 career WRC+ against them. The flip side of this is he destroyed righties in his peak and was still effective against them late in his career, with a 138 career WRC+ against right-handed pitching. With the glove, Choo was at one point a serviceable corner outfielder, but by the time he hit his 30s he was mostly relegated to a DH, which suppressed his WAR numbers a lot and prevented him from ever being considered a top-tier player, even if he had the offensive numbers of a perennial all-star. After Choo's excellent 2013, he signed a 7-year free agent mega deal with the Rangers and expectations were high. Unfortunately, those expectations were not met as Choo struggled with injuries for most of the season that sapped his power and resulted in the lowest OPS of his whole career. Choo had a solid 128 WRC+ for the Rangers' 2015 playoff run, notably being the first Asian player to hit for the cycle in the majors, and taking part in one of the most bizarre plays in baseball history, in the insane Game 5 of the ALDS in Toronto. In the 7th inning, Russell Martin's throw back to the pitcher deflected off Choo, resulting in the go-ahead run for the Rangers, who you probably know lost the lead in the next half inning and wound up losing the game. Choo did have a couple more unremarkable seasons in Texas, before a surprising resurgence in 2018. That season, he set the record for the most home runs by an Asian-born player with 176 in his career, and in the first half, he used his elite walk rate to reach base in 47 straight games, a Texas Rangers franchise record. Despite several seasons of 5+ WAR and WRC+'s over 130, Choo had never been selected to an All-Star game, but the on-base streak brought him enough publicity to be picked for the 2018 Midsummer Classic. One of the reasons Choo wasn't voted onto All-Star teams was he typically got better as the season went on, with an outstanding career 141 WRC+ in September. His numbers also didn't reflect his value relative to his team's offense, since Choo was significantly better in higher leverage situations during the regular season pretty much his whole career. Choo followed up his successful 2018 with a decent 2019, with a 112 WRC plus and a career-high 24 home runs, giving Rangers fans one last positive impression of him. He had a quiet short in 2020, helping the Rangers secure a solid draft pick, and at age 37 that was likely Choo's final MLB season. Over his 7-year tenure in Texas, Choo never did live up to the lofty expectations, but he steadily got on base at an above-average rate, and was an above-average hitter overall with a 111 WRC plus and 363 on-base percentage. Most of his value was tanked by his bad defense relegating him to the DH and his power diminishing in his mid-30s, but for what he was, a table-setting designated hitter, he did the job and he did it well. In hindsight, we can see that Choo had an excellent 6-year peak at the plate from 2008 to 2013, putting up a 137 WRC plus, right around names like David Ortiz and Adrian Gonzalez in that time frame. While he didn't replicate that success in his 30s with the Rangers, his excellent plate discipline still meant he was a valuable player on offense. In fact, every single year from 2008 to 2019, Choo was an above-average hitter by WRC+, which is something that almost nobody else can say. Now, you may recall me saying at the start of this video that Choo is the best Asian-born hitter in MLB history, and you might be livid at my notable snub of one Ichiro Suzuki. Now, my wording of best hitter was deliberate since Choo definitely doesn't come close to the overall ball player Ichiro was, being one of the smartest base runners and best corner outfield defenders ever, but strictly with the stick, at least hear me out. Here's a plot of every Asian-born position player with at least 100 plate appearances in MLB history. On the y-axis is career WAR, and Ichiro is way up here on an island, since again he was a very well-rounded player that played until he was 43. But on the x-axis is career OPS, and there are 3 standouts. Here's Shohei Ohtani, here's Hideki Matsui, and here's Shin-Soo Choo with a career 824 OPS and 123 WRC+. Ichiro clocks in with a career 757 OPS and 104 WRC+. Now you may say Ichiro played way past his peak, which deflated his career numbers, and you'd be right. But let's only take his 2001 to 2011, which was until he was 37, or a similar age in career plate appearances as Choo when he retired. Ichiro had a 791 OPS and 111 WRC+ in this time frame, which is still significantly worse than Choo's career numbers. Ichiro's peak in 2004, he had an absurd 372 average, but his low walk rate and power numbers meant he had an 869 OPS and 131 WRC+. Compare this to Choo's peak in 2013, where he had a 150 WRC+, and Choo had 4 career seasons with a WRC+ better than Ichiro's 2004. Now granted, plus-adjusted stats from Ichiro's peak are skewed by the steroid era, and it's hard to compare hitters with such different profiles, but it just illustrates that even though Ichiro was a more talented natural hitter than Choo, Choo's plate discipline and power in his prime meant he was the better hitter overall. The point of this whole spiel wasn't to trash on Ichiro in any way. Ichiro is my favorite hitter of all time, but it highlights just how underappreciated Choo's career really was. Maybe it was that he spent his peak playing in Cleveland for a small market, non-competitive team, or that a lot of his value was from boring walks, but most discussion of Asian position players starts and ends with Ichiro and Hideki Matsui, while Choo was better with the bat than either of them. And he wasn't just great for an Asian hitter, in his peak he was great period, being a top 20 position player in MLB for his entire tenure with Cleveland. I'm not saying Choo was a Hall of Famer or that he was better than Ichiro, but I am saying that you should appreciate him more than you probably do. Thanks for sticking around. If you're enjoying the content, it helps me out a ton to like and subscribe, and maybe check out my Twitter. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.